it's Saturday morning. We played a session at Prime Social Club last night and it went pretty well. We're going to do some hand reviews, but first I ended up buying a camera because I want to continue to make videos and I wanted to upgrade my setup a little bit. So we are now the proud owners of a Canon G7X, and today we put it to good use. Before we go have some fun, we gotta fill our tummies. Okay, so we made a pit stop at my mother-in-law's house. So let's take this time to go over a hand from last night. So the game is 1-3 No Limit Holdem. We're at Prime Social Club. We have our list on a 5-5 game, but it looks like the game's probably not going to go. There's only about 4 people on the list, and this is probably about 11 o'clock already. So we look down in middle position at 2 black kings. The early position player puts in a raise to 10. It's a pretty small raise for this game. Typically, people have been raising to about 15. So we definitely want to put in a 3-bet here. So we go ahead and make it 35. We get 1 caller from the small blind, and the early position raiser calls also. Flop is 10-8-5 rainbow. It's a pretty good flop for our hand. Obviously, our opponents can have more sets than us here. We could have a set of 10s though. And we're going to have a lot of overpairs and also overcards. Both the players check, and we need to go ahead and put in a bet here. Don't really want to give 2 people a free card to try to make a hand. So we bet 60, and both players call pretty quickly. Now the initial raiser is kind of a, I would say, a spewy player, but also very unpredictable. I haven't really seen him show down any bluffs yet, but I have seen him overvalue some hands like top pair in certain situations. The other player seems to be a pretty tight player. She's shown down a total of 3 hands, and all 3 of those hands she had a set. So I'm kind of assuming that if she calls here, she definitely either already has a piece or she has some kind of draw. This board is pretty dry, so there's not a whole lot of draws out there. She maybe could be calling with a hand like 6-7, although I'm not sure that she would call a 3-bet with that hand. She could also have a hand like 9s in her range, or 7s, maybe jacks, something like that. Maybe she plans on calling 1-bet. So the turn is an 8 pairing the board. This is, it's an okay card. We could be getting some floats from our opponents who might have hit the 8 on the flop, but in the 3-bet calling range, I think there's not going to be a ton of 8s. So we're likely going to continue to bet here, but we don't have to because early position leads out for 120. I guess he's saying he has an 8, considering he checked the flop and just called my bet, but definitely can't fold just yet. So we make the $120 call. I don't think raising here would be appropriate. Our hand is pretty strong and it makes a good bluff catcher, but I don't think it's strong enough to re-raise. We want to re-raise here with our strong value hands and then also some of our weaker hands as bluffs. I think if he had a set, he would have likely check raised the flop, but like I said, this player is a little erratic, so there's a chance that he has a big hand here and he was trying to trap us by just calling on the flop. So we make the call for 120 and the small blind folds. The river is a 4. There is no flushes possible on this board, but now there is a straight possibility, but there is only one. So early position shoves the rest of his stack in, which is probably about 700 to 800. We have him covered. But this is a pretty huge bet. Remember, this is just a 1-3 game, so we're talking about a 250 big blind bet, somewhere in that vicinity. We are not ecstatic about this bet. It does look highly polarized. He could either show up here with a bluff, or he would show up here with an extremely strong hand. Like the weakest possible would probably be 3/8. He could be moving in here trying to make it look like a bluff, but I'm not sure that I give this player credit for thinking on that level. So in hindsight, I believe that I should call here. I think that this player in particular is just going to bluff this spot more than they're going to have value hands. I don't think he's balancing his, 1.3x pot size bet on the river with value. I think that potentially he's playing exploitively in the sense that he wants to bet more to try to make me fold. And I think those are all reasons why we should probably call here. But at the time, like I said, I really hadn't seen this player show down any bluffs. So my thought process was that we can lay this hand down and we'll have better hands here. We'll have tens. We could have a hand like ace-8 suited that we could call with. And we could call with aces too. So, that's okay. Sometimes you don't have to call with all your overpairs. We could maybe just call with aces in this spot. We could also probably include kings and maybe fold queens and jacks or something like that. In retrospect, I think against a blank slate, I'm likely to call with my kings and my aces and possibly fold my queens and my jacks as overpairs. So we make the fold and he shows us a bluff. It's ace-king offsuit. Really unfortunate. Would have been a huge pot and would have liked to scoop that one, but I'm not too upset with my play here. But yeah, I think maybe we could make a pretty good argument for calling. This is pretty cool. This is a replica of Abraham Lincoln's casket. You can see here they did this train tour. They went all over the US with his casket and his body. Lots of cool stuff there. They have all kinds of crazy caskets that you can look at. They have old hearses from the early 1900s. They have buggy hearses from the 1800s. Kind of off the beaten path, but if you're coming to Houston and you want to do something a little bit different, I would highly recommend it. So now we're back home enjoying our favorite beverage, which is Topo Chico. Let's talk about another hand from last night. So in this hand we have ace-8 suited. We are in the cutoff. There are two limpers ahead of us. We go ahead and bump it up to 20. I like to raise with a lot of my ace suited hands, especially from late position, and sometimes we'll even 3-bet them. The big blind and both limpers call, so we're going to a flop. Flop is 3, 6, 8 with 2 spades. So this is a pretty good flop for us. We've got top pair, top kicker, and the nut flush draw. The top pair is pretty weak because a lot of overcards are going to come on the next two streets in most cases. But at this point, we feel pretty good about this hand. Big blind and early position both check, and the middle position bets. He bets 40. Now, we could just flat here, but considering that we are in position and we don't particularly want the other players to come along, I like a raise. We bump it up to 130. Big blind and early position both fold, and middle position calls. The turn is a jack of hearts, and middle position doesn't take very long to jam the rest of his stack in, which is about 160. We've got him covered, and although this jack could have hit him, we actually still have the odds to call, even if he has a jack. So, kind of a no-brainer here. We go ahead and make the call. The river comes an ace, which gives us two pair, but it looks like we didn't need it anyways. He flips his hand up, 7-8 suited, so he also had top pair on the flop, but we had him beat the entire way, and he was drawn pretty thin. We only played about a 3.5-hour session, so really not too many other noteworthy hands. We had another hand where we had pocket aces, and we ended up with two short stacks all in on the turn, and they both miss, and we won that one too. So overall, a pretty good session. We ended up about $660. Typically, we like to play in the 5-5 game on Friday nights at Prime. This night, it didn't get going, unfortunately, but usually in that game, there is a lot of action and the stacks are much deeper. Hopefully, next time we go, which will probably be another Friday night, we can get in the 5-5 game. They have a ton of PLO action and a lot of 1-3 no limit hold'em. PLO games get really big. I've seen 25-50. I believe there was maybe even some 50-100 a couple times, and also some really high limit hold'em games like 25-50. So I want to go ahead and talk about the vlogger contest, which just ended. Congratulations to Matt Kiefer and Oliver. I can't remember Oliver's last name, but both of them had excellent videos. The top 5 were all really strong, and I think any one of them could have won. And I'm happy that they gave 2 platinum passes instead of just 1. So thank you, Andrew Nemi, Jeff Gross, and PokerStars for putting on a great competition, which inspired a lot of people to get outside of their comfort zone. So thank you for that. Also, want to give a quick shout out to Andrew. I shot him a question on Twitter about some camera stuff, and he responded and was super helpful. So I think we can say that this new partnership is going to be a good thing for him, and I hope that he can still continue to connect with his fans in a way that I feel like not very many people get a chance to. So thanks, Andrew, again. Oh, God. Jerk.